What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we return with Björn of Soilwork and Night Flight Orchestra. Thank you so much for being here today, man. It's great to have you here.
Hey man, how you doing? Thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, anytime, man. It's always great to have you back. We got brand new Soilwork coming out, which is pronounced Övergivenheten, and hopefully I got that.
Well done, well done.
I may or may not have been rehearsing that all week, but
Okay.
But speaking of that, was this just a continuation of your previous album, Vergleiten, or was this meant to signify almost like a new beginning for Soilwork in a way?
I guess it's a continuation a little bit. I mean, we I don't know, found it sort of like liberating to name our album something like with a Swedish word, and I think we wanted to continue on that path. And we tried to find another really powerful word, that can be seen from different angles, Övergivenheten means the abandonment, and that's definitely a powerful word that most of us can relate to. The fear of being abandoned, or even the fear of abandoning someone or something. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So that felt quite natural, and I don't know, it's kind of refreshing for us. Maybe we ran out of ideas in English. I don't know, but we also sort of reconnected to our roots a little bit in a way, even though we're definitely moving forward. And I don't know. I mean, I'm in a pretty good place nowadays. I'm feeling better than ever, and but it's been quite a rough journey, to get to where I am today. And I guess there's been. I've also been dealing a little bit with abandonment. I had to abandon certain things to get to where I am today. But it's been extremely rough. It's been hard. It's been a hard path to walk.
Yeah, it almost seems like we always have to, leave certain things behind. And that's kind of the vibe I got from this album. It's like in order to move forward, we sometimes have to leave things near and dear to us behind. That was kind of like the vibe
Yeah.
that I sort of got in it. With an album like Natural Born Chaos, I had like a big like apocalyptic sort of vibe behind it. I thought like Sworn to a Great Divide had more of kind of like a desolate feeling to it, and this has that sort of emotion of abandonment, but out of that
Yeah.
negativity comes a retribution.
Yeah, and I mean, it's always, when you abandon something, there's always a certain amount of guilt that you feel, So I think, there's also that, you need to deal with that as well. And I think that this has been a good way for me to sort of channel all those emotions for sure.
Do you feel that the first three singles that we've gotten on this album, the title track "Dreams of Nowhere" and No Somos La Guerra," is a good representation of what the entirety of this album is going to sound like, or is that just scratching the surface so far?
Uh, in a way, it's only scratching the surface, because I mean, it's going to take you on a pretty crazy journey when you listen through the whole album. I guess somewhat a pretty good representation. There's some pretty extreme stuff and intense stuff, but also some really softer passages, that creates a really interesting contrast and a nice dynamic, So, yeah, I'm really excited, for people to hear this whole album.
Yeah.
It's going to be really cool to see the reactions.
Yeah, well, I think what is so amazing about Soilwork is that there isn't one Soilwork song that sums up your entire sound. Like, you when Cannibal Corpse releases a single, it's going to be death metal. When Mayhem releases a single, it's going to be black metal. But like, I remember with Vergleiten, I think the first single was Witten or Full Moon Shoals, I can't remember. But like, you have so many different styles of your voice and instrumentation that it almost seems like there is no specific style that Soilwork can really be pigeonholed into, right?
No, I guess not. And I think I guess that's the beauty of it. We have a way more sort of playful approach to our songwriting nowadays, but that doesn't mean that. I mean, you can definitely hear it's us. I think I think we're definitely staying true to our roots in many ways. But I think it's we've also evolved a lot. There's been lineup changes, obviously, but it always brought something really good, I think, and made us step outside our comfort zones, and especially with the Living Infinite, making that album was crucial for us. I think we explored a lot of, unknown territories through that album, and that sort of led us to where we are today as well.
Can you believe that album's going to be 10 years old next year?
I know. I just thought about it the other day. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
And then Natural Born Chaos is 20. And that was our fourth album, not the first. So yeah, that puts things into perspective.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I was going to mention that there's actually a couple of anniversaries in Soilwork we need to, because I remember last year we talked about 20 years of A Predator's Portrait as well. So, but like with Natural Born Chaos, I don't think any album, when I think of albums that came out that amount of time ago, I can't think of an album in terms of context that aged so well. I remember you guys wrote that right after the anxiety of 9/11 and everything like that. Do you feel like maybe with songs like Natural Born Chaos or The Bringer or something like that, that maybe that album kind of like, I don't want to say predicted the way the world is going to be now, but do you almost think that that serves as almost kind of like a soundtrack to the times in a way?
Well, that's I don't know. That's quite interesting. It's an interesting thought. I mean, I really believe it was a little bit ahead of its time, musically and everything. And I mean, a couple of years later, I mean, a lot of bands started to name drop that album as a inspiration. I guess, especially the American metalcore scene, coming out in mid 2000s. So, but it is special. I mean, it's a very diverse album, but it's quite intense, and there's a certain atmosphere running through it. And I don't know, I don't know if it predicted anything, but I mean, it was a little bit ahead of its time, and I'm not quite sure we knew what we were doing, but I think there was something, I don't know, something primal about it. I mean, even though it's not our first album, it was sort of like the first album of a different, or like a new era, I guess.
You could definitely
also. So I think those are sort of key albums. Natural Born Chaos and then The Living Infinite, and they both sort of went under the radar when they came out. They only became sort of like more sort of celebrated like a couple of years later, I feel.
Yeah.
Because when we released Living Infinite, I mean, it got a lot of good reviews, but it was not like people came out of the woodworks like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. It's like, it was sort of, I felt that a lot of people sort of missed that album for some reason.
Well, I think it's because I mean, I love the Living Infinite, and I was just a little hesitant going into it because I think that the Panic broadcast was sort of like untouchable. In a way, I think people were. I mean, that I thought was definitely in like the top 3 tier of Soilwork albums. So maybe some people were a little hesitant on it.
Yeah, maybe. And I mean, it was also the time when Peter jumped off the second time, from the band. So it was a little bit of an uphill battle, but I mean that's where David came in as well, and he sort of encouraged me to pick up the guitar again and start writing songs. So a lot of, I don't know, it was a battle for sure. It's like who does that? You have one of the main composers of the band quitting for the second time, and that's like, I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna make a double album. Who does that? But I think that's how we're a quite stubborn band, and I think that's also why we maybe sometimes stay relevant somehow in the metal scene. I think that's an accomplishment in itself, that we keep releasing music that
and I think
moving forward.
And I think that if there was no pandemic, the last couple of years would have just been straight anniversary tours. 2021, you'd have to do an anniversary tour of A Predator's Portrait. This year, you would have to do an anniversary of Natural Born Chaos. Next year, you'll have to do an anniversary of Figure Number 5. Just nonstop Soilwork anniversary.
So we just get that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, I know like asking, the meaning of lyrics and stuff, but for me, The Bringer, which has my favorite guitar solo of all time, as well as lyrically, I mean, Bring It Back, Bring It Home to the Place I Used to Know, is just such like there's almost kind of like an essence of, do we want to go back, in a way. I was just wondering what the mindset of that particular song was, if you don't mind me asking.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's 20 years ago, but I mean, I think because maybe I wasn't really ready to be in an established band who's touring the world. That was not in the plans, for me. I loved music, but I sort of randomly became a singer, and before I knew it, we started touring, and then 4 years later was released like an album every year, just about, and I think that was me just trying to sort of desperately reconnecting to that person, before all of that stuff started to happen, and because I was like, what is going on? And I think it's only now that I can sort of look back and actually digest what we've been doing, especially during COVID. Those 2 years is the first time I stopped in 20 years, basically, and then I can really sort of reconnect to that person again.
Yeah.
Before this band started to take off and started touring. Because it happened so, I don't know, I wouldn't say randomly. I mean, there was something special, and I felt it, but I didn't think it was gonna become like a 20 year thing.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It represents the pain.
But yeah,
of
I
evolution.
mean, yeah. But these latest 2 years, I gotten to sort of reconnect to that person and got to know the person, the real Björn, so to speak. That's not always behind a microphone or singing or on stage, and so I think that's been really good for me. And that's what I feel when I listen to The Bringer and think about the lyrics.
The pain of
I
evolution.
think that's where sort of like desperately connect to what is going on and how, what happened to that person, and because it's really, when things are starting to take off, it's really hard to actually realize what is going on and what you're becoming, and because you're, of course, there's so much of me in our music and lyrics through the years, but you're also entering a little bit of a persona, and when you do that enough, it's sometimes hard going back to just being that other person, without sounding too schizophrenic.
No.
I'm sure. Yeah.
No, I mean,
I'm sure people can relate to our touring musicians. So.
I couldn't agree with you more. And any artist, whether they're a musician or a painter or whatever, when they say, "Oh, I'm still the same guy as I was when I started," I'm like, "No, you're not. You're not. Like, the work you create is going to impact you. The people you meet are going to impact
absolutely.
You. So like,
absolutely. But that doesn't mean that I'm not grounded. I've always felt super grounded. That's like the easiest thing in the world, to not be a stuck-up asshole. That's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
To just be, I'm not, I wouldn't say that I'm a normal human being, because like you said, it affects you. Nobody's ready for that kind of life, and well, only a few, I would say, and it will have an impact. And sometimes I feel like there's no going back, but maybe there is, and that's what I'd like to think after those 2 years that we've had now with a break, and I feel more reconnected and more sort of comfortable in my own skin again. I don't know if that makes sense, but something happened.
Well, being that you are such a prolific artist, like, because we talked about Night Flight Orchestra last year, and I mean, just to give like a rundown, I think you have been in more bands than Phil Anselmo or Mike Patton at this point, with Terror.
Probably.
With Terror, not the hardcore band we're talking about, but also playing with Almeth and Nemesis Alpha, I Legion. I mean, the Metal Archives list just goes down, like it'll take you like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's a pretty long one.
Yeah,
and it's all session work, and but it's collaboration. So I wouldn't say that I'm like I've been a member of those bands. There's only well, not a few, but I mean, we got Soilwork, we got Night Flight Orchestra, and now I'm also playing guitar together with my fiance in a band called Donna Canona. And it's fun to actually play guitar for a change and not be the frontman. It's very liberating, actually.
Yeah, but do you feel Oh, I'm sorry, you were saying?
Of course, I've also been doing several albums with Disharmonia Mundi and Terra 2000, and those are pretty close friends at this point, But it's most of the stuff you see out there is one-off collaborations or session work, but it has made me into a better singer, for sure.
Well, having multiple usages of your voice and kind of going back to this your own skin and everything like that, when you have multiple usages of your voice that is very clean and very aggressive, and playing with multiple bands, does it almost feel like you maybe express something differently or portray somebody differently in a way?
Well, I guess Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's all again about just stepping outside your comfort zone. I think because sometimes you get thrown some really weird stuff, and I have people reach out to me and they want me to sing exactly like whatever demo vocals that are on the song, and it's like as soon as you change something just a little bit, no, we want it exactly like that. It's like why did you get me, to do the vocals? Because I'm quite, you know, I can do a lot of things with my voice. It's like, no, we want it that way. Okay, whatever, sure, But it's more fun when I get to do my own thing, But and sometimes, I get some really weird stuff that I wasn't prepared for, and I'm trying to really do my best, and make something out of that, and that I think that's how you really evolve, as a singer. So it definitely did something to my voice.
When it comes to every album in the Soilwork catalog, from Steel Bath Suicide to now, do you almost want every album to kind of be like a snapshot or a representation of who you and Soilwork are at that particular time? Or kind of like what I said about Natural Born Chaos, do you think that maybe the concepts or the meaning could evolve over time as well, as you evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's important that the album sort of represents where you are as a person and as a band at that time. I think that's the main goal. I think, and I think that's been a good thing for us, especially since there've been quite a lot of lineup changes through the years. But there's been a lot of people coming in that brought something really interesting to the table. And I think we have gone through like different eras, but we've always sounded like Soilwork to me. Whatever that is, it's kind of hard to put your finger on exactly what that is, to specify what it is. But that doesn't mean that there's certain topics that you can bring up again, like you mentioned, the bringer. It's still sort of like an ongoing thing, and especially now that we had those 2 years off, and where I could sort of maybe relate to that lyric again. So that does happen, but I think the most important thing is that that we write something that really represents where we are right now as people, which is hard. We're 6 people, and we're on different stages in life, and me and David has written most of the new album, and we've been on different planets, mentally. He's been in a really, really dark place, and whereas I've been in a very stable phase of my life, and I'm feeling better than ever, I would say, and I'm not lying one bit when I say that, and that creates an interesting contrast. I mean, we're really close as people, and we're very different as people, but it's been really hard for us to sort of channel all of those emotions into one album, since we're in such different phases, in our lives, but I think that also is something that makes this album special, and so it's quite diverse, and so many different emotions running through it. It's very dark, it's very melancholic, and maybe even has like a destructive feel at some points, but at the same time it's very, very uplifting and empowering, I would say. It's a pretty interesting journey to listen through the whole album. And I think people are gonna really, I don't know, hopefully people can feel the presence, that runs through the album. That's the main thing.
Well, I mean, that's something I've always given Soilwork credit for, because like I think, there's bands that sing about different subject matters or experiment with styles, but when it comes to vibe, I'm always listening to your voice and it's always Soilwork, but like you are so versatile with the emotions that are demonstrated on here. I mean, I remember Stabbing the Drama was my first Soilwork album. That was the first one I discovered. And I remember, opening up with Stabbing the Drama that's very angry and in your face, but then having a track like Fate in Motion that's very, very melancholy, and I also is my favorite Soilwork deep cut too. But
cool.
But like you have all these diverse emotions in a way. Like, do you almost like can you do you have to only write when you're feeling that certain emotion, or because emotions come and go so quickly? How do you maintain that specific emotion?
Well, I mean, I've sort of gradually found out that I at least I feel that way, that I express myself better through melodies than words. And by that being said, that doesn't mean that I still enjoy to write lyrics and that I can still express myself through lyrics. And I've definitely written some good lyrics as well that I'm very proud of. But I don't know. There's something about it that I'm better at expressing myself through melodies, and I really felt that with this new album. You know, when you know, I had a lot of time off, and I felt like, how am I going to be back? You know, be able to go back being that person again and write this kind of music. I mean, because it was just weird. I think some people can relate. You had suddenly so much time on your hands, you know, and then I sort of had to force start the engines a little bit when it came to the songwriting. But then once I opened that door, some really amazing things came out, and I felt that I'm, you know, this is some of the best melodies that I've ever written, and I felt that I expressed a lot of emotions through those melodies, and I also wrote some lyrics, but I would say especially the melodies. That's sort of reveals, you know, where I am right now. You know,
Definitely.
as a person.
And you
Yeah.
have that ability, as I like to say, like you have that ability to people could find comfort in your voice, but at the same time it could also be very chilling as well. Like there's parts where, like, I think Light Discovering Darkness is a very unsettling track or
Yeah.
something like that. But then, like, I
Yeah.
feel like Two Lives Worth of Reckoning, like, is almost kind of like a unifying track. So I think you kind
Yeah.
of, with melody all together, are just able to tackle everything on the periodic table of emotions.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, and that's really, you know, that's what I want to do. You know, I because there's so many emotions to express, you know, and it doesn't always have to be something, you know, sad or destructive, you know, like I used to think, you know. It's like, oh, and sometimes I'm just looking back, it's like, oh, come on, enough with the teenage angst, you know.
Yeah,
but I think it was raw emotion every time, you know.
definitely.
I wasn't I was never pretending. So
Yeah, and they need to make us stalemate any athletic sort of anthem as well. Off of
oh yeah,
Stemming the Drama. That's a competitive song.
true.
And going back to that
Yeah,
snapshot question I asked, where every album is a representation of your of the time you're in, but like I remember, like you went from Chain Heart Machine to A Predator's Portrait to Natural Born Chaos to Figure Number Five, all within a year of each other. Like, was there
yeah.
that much evolution of who you were as a person demonstrated in such a short period of time?
I think a lot of things happened during those years, and I mean, it's just crazy to think that we just released one album a year. You know, that's just too too many emotions to put out there. You know, it's just. But we were in a really creative phase, you know, and I think we like every day we found new ways to express ourselves musically and you know, I guess lyrically as well. So it's really hard to say exactly what was going on. It's like it's such a long time ago, but it was an extremely creative phase, and I guess, you know, we were discovering new sides of ourselves through music and being a touring band, I think, as well, and obviously seeing the world and with when, you know, getting so much new experiences that we never thought we were gonna get, you know. I
Yes.
think that, you know, going touring Australia like twice in 2003, like what is going on? You know, how do you deal with that? You know,
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
definitely. I mean, I'd imagine you've seen some. I think like your first European tour was like with Christian or something like that back in the day, or something like that. So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you've
yeah.
seen. I
Correct.
mean, just that one tour alone, you probably have seen so much that like, you know, it's just gonna make an impact on you one way or another. It's impossible not to write about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that first, you know, we were traveling around in a camper through Europe. It was not glamorous whatsoever. I mean, I don't think our touring has been ever that glamorous. But you
Not in
know,
this
it's
genre.
gradually becoming a little bit better and comfort wise. But yeah, and then, I mean, we went to Japan at a very early stage as well, already in '98. You know, before that, I only fly like domestic in Sweden, and then suddenly, you know, flying via Charles de Gaulle in Paris, and then to Tokyo from there. You know, people smoking on the plane. I can't believe that you know that they actually were able to do that back in '98. Um, and then coming to Japan, and it's just like, what is going on? You know, I never traveled that much as a kid or as a teenager. So that was a whole new world opening, literally. So I had to deal with it, in some way.
Definitely. And I have two more
Yeah.
questions for you. One of them is another anniversary question, actually, because it's also 10 years of the
All right.
debut of Night Flight Orchestra since we first heard Internal
Yeah.
Affairs. And again, with the last Night Flight Orchestra that we heard with Aromantic, I think it was so beautiful. Like, and I kind of addressed it a little bit earlier, like if it's showing different sides of yourself. But with the debut of Night Flight Orchestra, was that meant like kind of like something to hold you over between a Panic broadcast and the Living Infinite in a way? Was it meant to kind of like explore new territory, and that is kind of what allowed you to bring in new tricks and twists to the Living Infinite?
Um, yeah, hard to say. I mean, releasing the first, starting Night Flight Orchestra, I think that was something that I just had to do. I think that was a really important step. To get together and sort of express other influences through that band. And maybe it did have an impact as well with the way we approached the Living Infinite. It's hard to say. Maybe it did. And because I think I also explored new voices, with the Night Flight Orchestra. I took that with me to the Living Infinite, but already from the get-go, it was completely different things. It's completely different mindsets, these two bands, and people, have started making comparisons, but for me and David, it's completely different units and completely different, emotions running through those two bands. But like I said, I was sort of tired to channel all my influences into one band. It's like I can't be Tom Araya and Lou Graham in the same band. You know what I mean? It's like,
Hey, that's a
so
good
that's
challenge.
like, and then yeah, that's really hard to do. And it's like I felt so liberated starting in Night Flight Orchestra and doing something completely different where basically anything goes. I think I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe I brought some of that with me to the Living Infinite as well.
Yeah,
I would say.
100%. And the final question I wanted to ask you is when you are playing live and you're bringing in all this new albums. I hope you're touring the States soon with this new album because we are very excited to hear it here. But when you are bringing in different songs from different parts of the set lists and like diving into different eras of Soilwork, is it almost like you are going kind of back in time in a way? Does it put you back in time when you're performing like older songs live with newer songs, or do you feel like it gives it almost like a new lease of life and a live presence to the point where it kind of represents more of a modern feel to it?
Good question. I mean, I think it brings me back, and I've also felt that we've been doing a bunch of festivals this summer, and I don't know. I felt like I've been more comfortable than ever on stage, and I could sort of really take things in more than ever. And when we played those old songs, it feels like to fill a purpose where I can reconnect to those times. And it wasn't like that, before. Of course, I enjoyed performing old songs, but it was almost like I couldn't really connect to them. They were just in the set, and I just want to sort of get to the new stuff. But now it's all comes together somehow, and I can really take things in. I can really see how it affects people in the crowd, and take in people's reactions to it, and really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I know I'm talking a lot about it. It sounds like COVID was the most positive thing to ever happen to this earth. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Not
it's
at all.
like,
but it was a great
timing wise. It was a needed break for me. I think and it was a forced break, obviously, and so many people suffered. But on a personal level, it definitely did something where I could definitely appreciate things a lot more, and I'm sure people can relate to that as well. Even though it was a really rough time.
Definitely, and I think it only prolonged because I'd imagine that you were going to come to the States for Verkleiden in 2020 or something like that. But
yeah, exactly.
But we haven't seen Soilwork since the tour with Unearth back in 2016. So it's been.
I know it's ridiculous,
so,
but we're working on it.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time. And this new album is
Thank you.
congratulations on just another epic release. And it's definitely an album that many people could definitely need for these times. Is there just anything else with Soilwork that you would like to promote with the release of this new album in terms of tours that you're allowed to plug, and anything else you'd like to promote with any project you're in?
Wow. Well, we have a new single coming out fairly soon, the fourth single, and I'm just hoping that people will pick up the album when it comes out on August 19th. It's real special, and I think it's a pretty good summary of our career in a way, and I just want to thank our loyal fans for sticking with us through the years, and that they've actually grown to love the fact that we always bring the element of a surprise in for each and every album, and I really, you know that's fun, and I really appreciate that, so thank you.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think Soilwork hits the best of both worlds, where you have a sound that people can gravitate towards, but there's always new stuff to discover within it. And I think
Yeah,
this is a great summary of your career and a great summary of things to come as well.
brilliant.
Yeah, but well, Bjorn, thank you so much, everybody. Bjorn of Soilwork. Be sure to check out Övergivenheten coming out August 19th. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.